Hey everyone, it's Anthony here at Talk and Review, and today I'm finally getting back to reviewing movies. Finally getting back to it. So let's go. So today we're talking Tenet, written and directed by Christopher Nolan. Let's go. So rather than actually going over the plot of this, because I would find it extremely difficult to explain this plot to you without going through spoilers, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read out IMDb's plot summary because it seems to be the quickest and easiest way to explain this plot without going through some spoilers. So, IMDb explain this movie as armed with only one word, Tenet, and fighting for the survival of the entire world, a protagonist's journey through a twilight world of international espionage on a mission that will unfold something beyond real time. Now, I appreciate that means absolutely nothing, and I want to reassure you in going into this movie, at least for the first hour of it, you still feel that confused. Now, that seems a very weird thing for me to reassure you with, but the only reason I say that is because you're not alone when you look at this movie and think that looks confusing. Because this movie is really, really ambitious, and if anyone comes away from this movie and says that it wasn't confusing or they weren't scratching their head at some point in it, I'm going to tell you right now, they're lying. Tenet sees Christopher Nolan flex his love for time manipulation, time travel, as we've seen in his previous, not all, but some of his previous outings. This is in full force in this one. I'm not going to go over spoiler points. I'm not going to go over too much plot points because it has just come out, and I do urge people to go and see this because it's very much, I believe it's going to be very much a Marmite kind of film. You're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. And I can understand both why one would love it. I can also understand why one would hate it. So there's absolutely no secret about this movie conveying some form of time manipulation, i.e. what they call in the movie inversion. I won't go over inversion too much because it's something that you need to experience in the movie in its fullest, but you get that from the trailers, that you get a lot of forward in time, you get a lot of backward in time, and at times you get both interacting with each other, which leads me on to the visual aspect of this movie. Visually, this movie is breathtaking. It's absolutely stunning. What Chris Nolan has done with this movie, with minimal CGI and minimal effects, mainly all practical effects, is nothing short of absolutely staggering. It looks gorgeous, and there is one sequence in particular, and it's not a spoiler, but there is one sequence in particular where a building is simultaneously reverse destroyed and destroyed at the same time, which is just incredible to see. The imagination and the vision in order to be able to pull off the set pieces in this movie is incredible. And I think I can honestly say no one is going to be disappointed with the spectacle of this movie because visually it's breathtaking. The complexity of this movie is going to be one that splits people's opinions, I think, on this one, because for the first hour and a half, you are pretty much just going along for the ride. And what I mean by that is that not a lot is explained because Nolan has a knack of trying to take you along as much as you can without having to explain it, so that there seems to be some form of a reveal at the end which makes everything that you've seen prior all make sense. And it's very much in full force in this movie. There is a lot of things that come to fruition at the end of this movie which makes the beginning and the middle of the movie make a lot more sense. So in that aspect, a second viewing would feel a little easier to watch, and I think that you would get a lot more from a second viewing and appreciate the movie a lot more the second time round because you understand what is going on in the first place. That being said, an hour to an hour and a half of just going along with it to see what happens will lose people. It didn't lose me because I was very interested to see where this is going, and I almost kind of wanted to prove myself right that my thoughts about what's going to happen are going to be what is going to happen. So I'm kind of going along with it just to see if I'm right. But I did see a lot of people almost kind of start to look around in the cinema. That's when you start to see a lot of people look at their phones, is when you get to the point where they're kind of like, I don't feel like this is ever really going to make sense. I'm just giving up on it. So I understand that. I would urge for you, if you are going to watch that, please just bear with it, because it does become apparent. I think conceptually, this movie is extremely clever, extremely original. There is nothing out there at the moment that is quite like this, and I don't think there is any filmmakers out there at the moment that are daring enough to try and take this level of originality on, if I'm being honest, other than Nolan, because he seems to have a knack for it. I don't think this is Nolan's best movie, not by a long shot, but it's not bad. It's not bad. I actually do like it. I do have a lot of criticism of this movie, but it's because I hold Christopher Nolan in very high regards. I almost expect a little more from him because of what he's been able to produce in the past. Therefore, I feel like I am a little bit more critical of him. But just because I am critical of him doesn't mean that I dislike the movie. I actually quite like the movie and what it has to offer. But there are points that I do feel need to be criticised. I don't feel like the visual aspect and the complexity is enough to hold this movie together without mentioning the lack of plot. The plot is a very basic plot interwoven in this really complex story. The plot is very basic, and the characters, there's absolutely no characterization of any of these people in this movie. You know very little about any of these characters in this movie, which means it's very hard to kind of connect and resonate with any of them. The only person that you can really resonate with or connect with is Elizabeth Debicki. She is kind of like the heart and soul of the movie. But her alone and her relationship with the protagonist, that's his name. John David Washington's name in this is the protagonist. He has no name. Their connection together isn't enough for me. It doesn't work. They try, but it doesn't feel organic. It feels quite forced. I will say the only real thing acting-wise that impressed me was Robert Pattinson. He was really, really charming in all of his scenes. He seemed to be the main focus. Whenever he was on the screen, you're kind of drawn to him. And he has this charming ability to be able to draw you into him. So he was the standout in terms of the acting ability. Everything else was a little meh. It was a little okay. It just seemed very forced at times. And Kenneth Branagh, at times, he goes all out with this villain role. He goes all out with it, and at times it feels almost a little pantomime, which kind of makes me cringe a little bit, because this is a serious, complex sci-fi type movie, and then you get this like pantomime-esque villain, and you kind of just go, oh, okay, sure. Some people love it, some people hate it. I just thought it was just like, okay, just tone it down a little bit. I would say from an acting point, it could be better, because Nolan has proved that he can have these really narrative-driven stories such as Inception, but also have really compelling characters alongside it. Like Leonardo DiCaprio as Cobb in Inception. You understand why he's doing what he's doing because you get an in-depth look into that character, as well as this really complex story going forward. You don't really get that with this. You get the complex story going forward and you get the characters, but you don't really get an inside look into them. And I feel like it's deliberately done in this movie. Nolan seems to have deliberately kind of distanced his characters away from the story, and I couldn't tell you why, but it does feel deliberate in its delivery. So there's obviously a reason for it. He will be able to tell you why. It's not a huge thing. It doesn't make me dislike the movie, but it's very noticeable. And I think that a lot of people have said the same thing. The other thing that is really, really off-putting about the movie is the music, the score. Not because it's a bad score. I think it's a really lovely score. And at times there's a quality to the score that almost makes the music sound reversed, which is perfect. But the sheer volume of it drowns out the dialogue at most times. Like, there are scenes where you don't understand what people are saying because it's either too quiet, they're speaking too fast, or they're wearing a mask, or sometimes all three. And then you've got this huge huge score behind it, playing at an obscene volume, all of it together, you're just kind of like, okay, I guess I'm just going to give up on figuring out what they're saying then, because I haven't got a clue. Overall, though, I did like it. I think if you're a fan of Nolan, you are going to like this. Some of the set pieces in this movie, like I said before, are absolutely staggering, and the balls it takes to take on a movie like this for its originality and be able to pull it off in the way that he has pulled it off is commendable. It's absolutely commendable. The issue you have here is that Nolan has produced so much better beforehand. So this is definitely not his best. I wouldn't say it's his worst, but it's okay, it's good, it's worth a watch. Lastly, before I go, I will say that it does try to explain a lot of things along the way, but not in a very dumbed down way, which I kind of appreciate, because I think what Nolan does is he treats his audience as he wants to be treated in a level of intelligence. So he leaves it quite open for interpretation at times. He does try to explain it in a way that people can try and understand, but not in a way that makes it kind of like hand-holding. So there are a lot of explanations along the way, but not so much where you kind of go, okay, yeah, I've got it, yeah, I've got it. There is still room for kind of like, what does that mean? Or what does that mean? Which I quite like. It adds a little bit of mystery, but it also allows the audience to feel intelligent enough to be able to work it out for themselves, which I really, really appreciate and I really like. Overall, I enjoyed it. I think I'm not going to be rushing to go back and watch it, but that's simply because of the situation we're in at the moment. I will get it when it's out on Blu-ray, and I'm pretty sure that I'll enjoy it much more the second time round, simply because I know what's happening, so you can appreciate all the little details that are in there that you missed the first time round. It's definitely one that I would recommend if you are a Nolan fan. If you're an average moviegoer, you're probably not going to like it, simply because it doesn't make sense a lot of the time, and if you're not invested in it by an hour and a half in, you're going to lose yourself, and it's possibly one that you might even turn off. I hope you wouldn't, but I could see why people would. Have you guys seen it yet? What did you think of it? Make sure you leave me a comment in the comment section below. If you haven't liked the video already, click that like button and make sure you subscribe to the channel. We've got a lot of great content coming out on our movie side and on our fragrance side, so make sure you stay tuned for that. And don't forget to check out our lives, guys. We run those every week, and we let you know through social media as to when they're going to be running. But until next time, peace! Yeah.